Welcome back to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where everyday people share the quotes that have shaped their lives, inviting us all to reflect and connect. Today we're joined by Natalini Joy, a powerful voice for women and a beacon of leadership and reinvention. After stepping away from a high-profile career, she embarked on a courageous journey of self-discovery, embracing her authentic self and inspiring others to do the same. Let's dive into Natalini's story and uncover the wisdom that has guided her along the way. Tell us your name and what your favorite quote is.
My name is Natalini. I don't know if I have a favorite quote, but there are certain statements that are very powerful and relevant for me in different periods of my life. And right now, something that's very, very present for me is the concept of fear. And fear is a compass, fear is a guiding principle, is something that shows us the way rather than something that we need to run away from, you know? And so I guess my favorite statement at the moment is fear is the compass, freedom is the destination.
So, fear is the compass, freedom is the destination. I'd love for you to just explain what that means to us.
What this means is I've noticed that there, of course, like when we talk about fear, there's two types of fear, to say the least, like to simplify things. But there is the fear that protects us, right? Like if you see, let's say, a dog that's barking at you, don't go there, right? You're afraid, so please don't go. So, but there are certain things in life.
Natalini,
Yes.
possible for you to.
So I was saying, from my experience, take the instinctive fear aside, take the fear that protects us aside. Like there is fear that protects us, but then there is fear that guides us. And the fear that guides us is in the more subtle realms. So, for example, you've hurt me, and I really want to say something to you, but I'm afraid to say it because whatever reason, right? And noticing that I'm afraid to speak to you is a signal for me that this is exactly what I need to do. Because if I'm afraid to speak to you, it means that a piece of me needs more love. There is a part of me that needs support, needs to be held, needs to be loved. And the way I can do that for me is by acknowledging that a part of me doesn't feel like is allowed or is let's say worthy enough to speak up. I can look at that side. I can give it love and attention and care. Maybe I can even try to talk to it. Maybe I can ask that side of me, why are you so afraid? But ultimately, what I'll do with this is I will actually come and talk to you, regardless of the fear. Overcoming that fear would absolutely guarantee for me growth. It will guarantee that I expand. That I discover parts of me that are otherwise dormant. They're otherwise sort of, they've lost their life force, even if you wish. And so that's a very simple example. And that can go into much bigger situations. It can go into much more scarier situations. Like, for example, I don't know, speaking on stage or being in front of camera or I don't know, telling your spouse that you don't love them anymore, or like things like this. But I've really noticed that once we embrace that fear and we let it guide us, we let it show us the way, we find freedom.
Yeah.
We find freedom on the other side, and this is why it's something that kind of stayed as a guiding principle for me over the last couple of years. Fear is the compass, freedom is the destination.
Now, I want us to get personal a little bit. Depends on how comfortable you are with sharing. But you said fear is the compass, freedom is the destination. Can you give us instances in your life where fear was compass is something that tells you the direction of what you should do, right? It gives you, okay, this is a pointer to it. Can you give us instances where fear was a pointer, a compass for you, and then what the freedom of that situation looked like after when you took the step?
Oh, I've had many of those.
We're going to be this episode is going to be juicy.
Yes. A few years ago, I um, I was in a very dysfunctional relationship. It was a very long relationship. We were together for 7 years. I thought we were going to get married and have kids together and all of that. But I wasn't happy in that relationship. I wasn't authentic. I wasn't myself. I wasn't satisfied. It was very difficult and um, very dysfunctional relationship. And at some point, I realized that I want to separate from my partner, but I was so afraid to do it. So afraid, so afraid. I was so afraid that it actually took me 2 years to
Ooh,
to finally do it. So 5 years into the relationship, I kind of knew that this was not going to work. But then the fear really started behaving me in a certain way that was not helpful for me. It was definitely not useful for me. And so I started arguing with my fear. I started trying to convince myself that this is great and this is a wonderful partner and we're going to build a family together and I don't need to leave. And the fear at the time was I was in my early 30s and I was really scared to be single in my early 30s because there's so much
stigma.
pressure on women to be married and to have children in their early 30s or already in their late 20s. And all of my friends were getting married, all of my friends were giving birth, and here I was at the edge of a relationship that was no longer functioning but not willing to let go because of fear of society and fear of losing the ability to maybe have a family one day and so on. And it was a big 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 deal. It was a big fear, and eventually, however, of course, like 2 years later, it became unbearable. The relationship became completely exhausted, and I faced that fear. I embraced it. I sat with it, and I finally did it. And it gave me absolutely so much freedom to be able to stand up for myself, to be able to listen to myself, to be able to act on my needs and my desires, regardless of how scary that is. And to find what's on the other side, to find that freedom to follow my needs and my desires, to follow what drives me, what makes me happy. So that's one example of a moment where fear was actually um, there to show me the way, and then it was very interesting to go deeper into why was I so afraid. What was that fear? Because that fear took 2 years of my life, and so it was a big sort of process for me. So then after I finally managed to kind of push through, I supported myself to overcome it. I spent a lot of time contemplating that fear and why was I so afraid? And also why was I in this relationship for so long? Like, even though it was not functioning for me. And just being with the fear, I was able to find out so much about me that later on was very, very helpful and very useful in my journey of self discovery and healing.
You mentioned that you have a lot, and the stories you've given us one. Can we have two more, please?
You want two more stories?
Yeah.
Um, okay. So later on, after I separated with that man, I was at the peak of my career. I was the CEO of a very, very influential, very reputable, very high level organization. I was very, respected and celebrated, and like I had this very kind of interesting life. I was meeting a lot of famous and powerful people, and on the outside, it looked like I was having like the dream life. And uh, however, there came a moment where I started realizing that this is not right for me, just as the relationship wasn't right for me.
Yeah.
And after doing some work on myself, I also realized that I was there sort of chasing the dreams of my family, not really my own dreams. And I had no idea what my own dreams are. I didn't know because I never really had that opportunity to express my creativity and my authentic sort of drive as a person. And so I really didn't know. So at some point there was a moment where I was like, okay, I think I need to quit that job and I think I need to discover myself. But that was terrifying because that job was giving me, it was giving me status. It was also, of course, paying the bills. But it was giving me like this sense of identity, this sense of belonging. And it was a job that it's like not many people would walk away from. Um, but there was this burning question of who am I if I don't do this?
Yeah.
And who am I if I don't try to be the person that my family wants me to be? Like who am I when all of this falls off? And then there was this absolutely terrifying silence. Like there's no answer to that question. I don't know who am I, without all these things. I just have no idea. And for me, like being I would say in a friendly relationship with fear, I was like, okay, I think this is exactly where I need to go, because there is first of all resistance and fear, but second of all there is something to be discovered that is so deeply hidden within me that I can't even fathom what it might be. And I did it. I took that decision. I stepped out of that position, as that role as a CEO, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because I was doing this job for 10 years. It was really kind of part of my life. It was really part of my identity. It was really part of who I was at the time. I lost a lot of my how can I say, like, a lot of the status that I carried, a lot of the respect, a lot of people stopped talking to me and stopped communicating with me. And if before, like, there were a lot of doors opening in front of me and I was invited to all these things, suddenly there was nothing. And there was this silence. It was this silence and this emptiness of the unknown, right? Of not knowing, of okay, so this is falling off, this is dying out, and from it something will emerge. But before it emerges, I need to be with the silence, the silence and emptiness of the unknown. And that, my friend, is terrifying. It's terrifying for anyone that has the most minimum sense of control, which I think all of us do. Um, and 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 to this day, I am so grateful that I followed that fear and that I allowed it to show me. Because even though it was so difficult, moving through the difficulty of not knowing, I was really able to actually find myself. I was able to meet myself. I was able to get to know myself. I was able to connect to the things that truly, truly make me happy, truly excite me, to this creativity that is my own, that is like emerging from the depths of my soul. And it's work is no longer work. It's joy, it's creation, it's a celebration. And if it wasn't for my awareness around how fear can be so um, um, loving, and so helpful in showing us the way, I would have never discovered this side of me, and I would have never had this beautiful gift. So I'm very grateful to fear in that sense. And of course, again, freedom is really what this gave me.
Thanks for sharing those stories.
I feel like I'm pushing it for Oliver asked for more.
Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insights, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join. Or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
More what?
Okay. You shared two stories. You shared the one about relationship, and you shared about the one of moving from the like the pinnacle of like top corporate world and leaving the career because it wasn't what you wanted, and you used fear as a compass to eventually get to freedom, right? Thanks so much for sharing that. And I feel like we could just make it three.
Okay. Is there a certain area that you would like me to focus on? Like, what
No.
does audience like to hear?
The stories you've been telling us have been fantastic. They've been on point. It's just how do I explain this to you now? It's just like in secondary school, for example. Okay, I don't know if it's secondary school there, but if in high school when they would teach mathematics, they would like give a theory or a concept, and then they'll give like 2 to 3 examples. Now each of the examples are important. It's not like I'm just like sometimes you're like, oh no, teacher, this example is not enough. Add more to it. Give us more examples, and then you get. So that's it. What you're doing is perfect. That's the whole concept. You've been like, thank you so much for sharing, so much for opening up and sharing. I really really appreciate that, and I just feel like I should ask. And yeah, if there's no great, awesome, I would go on. But earlier on the time with there's so many, and I was like, if there's so many, if I pull out three, it's not no nobody's going to notice.
There's so many. I mean, like there's huge stories and then there's like, I mean, smaller ones. Like there's stories of like everyday life, like for
Okay,
example,
okay.
something that I really struggle with and I'm learning to do better and better every day is boundaries. And because of my childhood traumas and the way I was brought up, for me, setting a boundary is terrifying. It's terrifying. I feel like if I tell someone that there's something that they cannot do, they will no longer love me and they
Ooh,
will run away, and I will lose that person. So every time that need comes up of like setting a boundary, it comes with this panic of like, oh my God, I have to actually now do it and potentially risk losing that person.
ooh,
And it's something that I'm really working through, and sometimes it takes me days to be able to actually say. Um, um, and it can be like in the simplest situations. Like I'm going to give you an example. So I'm um, I'm living in this beautiful shared house at the moment, and I have these amazing flatmates, right? And when I moved in at the beginning, I didn't know them very well, and for me, it was very important to get along and to like for them to like me and to feel like we I belong in their community. And the host of the house did something that crossed my boundary, and I felt it. Like it felt like there was a crossing of a boundary. Nothing big, nothing terrible or anything like that, but just like a very simple thing. And I really wanted to say something, but like I was so paralyzed with how would she respond, and what if the mind starts kind of blasting us with these like, what if she gets so upset with me for setting a boundary that she stops talking to me, and then she tells all the rest of the flatmates to not be friends with me, and I lose this sort of like community, and maybe they even kick me out of the house. Like it can go so big in our minds. But what's beautiful by now is that I'm able to observe that and I'm able to hold it. So I was like for a few days, like watching myself kind of struggling, and being taken by that fear and that paralysis, like really like paralysis of being able to speak up and to do something that is so natural and so normal for everyone. Um, I observed myself. I rehearsed. I had like a million internal dialogues when I'm like, I'm going to say it like this and I'm going to say it like that. Or maybe I'm going to just write her a message so that I don't have to say it face to face. Maybe I'm just going to call her when I'm not in the house. And, it was like this huge deal for me for something so small and so simple. But it's not small and simple for me. So that makes it big. And so after a few days, like I I kind of gave myself love. I feel like that's the other thing. Like when I say follow fear, I don't mean like force yourself and I don't mean like push yourself and tell yourself that you're not afraid and that you can do it and do it anyways. And no, I mean find that place in you that is afraid and give it love, because that's a part of you that is scared. It's a part of you that didn't receive love when it was small, when it was young, and now it's scared and it needs that love from us. I need to give it to myself. So being with that part of me, listening to it, giving it voice, soothing it, like telling it that it's fine, that it's actually not what's going to happen, and like being in that internal dialogue with the fear after a few days helped me to finally, face my flatmate and tell her, hey, by the way, can I just ask you next time, maybe you can do it like this and not like that because it's better for me. And it was like, and she was like, yeah, of course, no problem at all. For her, it was the most normal thing. It was not a big deal at all. But for me, like being able to actually climb that wall and go the other side of it and do it every time I need to speak up and set a boundary. That's really like it's more or less the same wall that I need to climb each time. But each time it gets smaller and it gets a bit easier and a bit easier and a bit easier because now I know that when I do it, people don't run away. I don't actually lose people. I don't, and that again, that's freedom because now I'm gradually becoming free enough to be able to set my own boundaries.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for sharing those stories. And I feel like it makes it so relatable to a lot of persons, such that they really understand. We're not just saying concepts or speaking big words. Now it's something that everybody can connect to and really understand. Thank you so much. I know I push a bit, but thank you so much for
Not at all.
yeah.
Mm.
Where can our listeners learn more about you and check out what
Yeah, everyone can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram profile is just Natalini. And you can follow me on LinkedIn under Natalini Joy. And I share things about my everyday life, my healing journey, my creative journey, and I really try to stay very real, very vulnerable, and connect with my audience. So I'd be very happy to connect with yours as well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Relatable Wisdom. If you found something meaningful in this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do that by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. Every little bit keeps the conversations going. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep growing.